You've seen her on the conference circuit, you've seen her moderate today, OFI's chair, and my personal hero, Dr. Sachiko Muto.
I'll be brief, and thank you, Sivan, for emptying the room. Just checking, of those still in the room, who was here yesterday for the inaugural European Open Source Awards? Oh, no. I'm asking because at the end of that event, I gave some closing remarks, and I solemnly pledged, in the interest of the future sustainability of open source, that I would no longer be giving the closing talk at OFE events, but I would hand the microphone over to a younger generation. And so it was a bit embarrassing when Sivan reminded me this morning that I would be giving the closing talk this evening. And so this is a true story, and a bit embarrassing for me because that was less than 24 hours ago. And dry January, lasted at least a week or so. But okay, I'll be very brief. Because that was embarrassing for me, but it gives me a chance at least to do better this time, because yesterday we didn't thank properly, I think, the team that was responsible for putting together the event. And so I want to say, yes. And so that was May from OpenForum Europe that was in charge of the event yesterday. And today, the person masterminding the whole event only forgot to ask me to do the closing remarks, is Jaakko, who's sitting right here in the third row. Supported, of course, by the entire OFE team. So I'm not going to attempt to summarize the whole event. We only have 5 minutes before, they will confiscate your belongings. We started the first panel by asking the question, what can open source do for Europe? And then, immediately I think the conversation moved on to sort of what has open source already done for Europe, and actually what should Europe be doing for open source? And then, fast forward, Gab gave me did the job for me really by saying that we shouldn't even be asking what's open source doing for Europe, or what can Europe do for open source, but rather how, And I think this is really where I see the conversation evolving. I'm happy to say that last year at the OFE Summit, for those who were there, some may have gotten the impression that we wouldn't be talking about open source in Europe anymore after the CRA. CRA would kill open source in Europe, and I'm glad to say that I think that that's not true, because I think there was a silver lining that came out of the pressure that the CRA put on the open source community to engage, and I think that we have have come some way to sharing the language for open source community to kind of understanding a little bit more how the processes in Brussels, how they work, and how to stay engaged. So that's the silver lining. So Gab was talking about actually the need to find new governance models or for new forms of governance to allow for truly open collaboration between open source communities and the public sector. And in my panel, I also talked about the standardization community. And so, as I said, I'm not trying to summarize the whole discussion, just saying that I believe that we have come some way towards having a shared language. It's not the same discussion that we're having every year. The discussions are evolving. We are finding, shared language. We are finding out where the conversations are happening, and I think we're bringing open source spokespersons to Brussels. So, then there was also a thing about the doula of code bases, but I don't know how many people here know what a doula is and understand truly how interesting that comment was, but okay, I'll leave that for next year. And so, I think that's it. We'll be back here next year, and I think some of the conversation will have moved on. Some issues will still be there to be resolved, but for now, I think we have all deserved the cocktail, and they put a sheet over the buffet over there, and I think they haven't unveiled the buffet just yet. We can still make it, so thank you for staying in the room. Go get your stuff, go get a drink, and I'll see you again next year. Thank you.